Welcome to the Voices edition of the Ryersonian podcast. This is Jonathan Forani.
And I'm Lauren Murphy. Today we speak with next week's Voices columnist, May Warren, about living every traveler's worst nightmare, being stuck in an airport for days on end.
We break down some of the week's most interesting trending topics, including the latest Kardashian divorce, how Twitter is the future of TV, and just how awesome Fox News is.
So keep it locked right here for that and much more.
So we have May Warren here in the studio with us. Thanks for joining us today, May.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. So May, you are the author of next week's Voices column. Tell us a little bit of what it's about.
So it's about Christmas 2010 when I was coming home from Europe to see my family for Christmas holidays, and I ended up getting stuck in Heathrow Airport for about 5 days. It was a perfect storm. There were like hundreds of thousands of people, busiest time of the year, and they had a really tiny, by Canadian perspective, snowstorm, and they just couldn't handle it. They didn't have any equipment. So they were totally overwhelmed by this. The system was totally jammed. They didn't have any hotel vouchers or any food vouchers. So we ended up spending one night on the floor, and then we were going to a hotel that we were paying for out of pocket, like way into the city center, because all the ones around the airport were booked. So
when you did sleep on the floor in the airport, where'd you sleep? It just sort of between seats or?
Yeah, so that would have been a great idea, but there was like kind of competition for good spots because there were so many people. So we ended up going behind some vending machines. I don't know why we thought that would be like a great place. And we took these little aluminum foil emergency blankets that they gave us and used that as like our little bed. And it was awful.
It was like the Heathrow Airport Hunger Games or
yeah,
something.
Exactly.
What did they do to apologize or help you make this any easier for you as it was happening?
So I think that was the craziest thing, was it just kind of felt like you were becoming like a non-human. Like no one was helping you. People were kind of breaking down. I had a couple of bad moments myself, and like the employees I've kept repeating the same message of like, there's nothing we can do and whatever.
Okay, what was the worst of humanity you saw?
I don't know. I guess just like there was this moment where I had been waiting on standby like all day until about midnight, and then the Air Canada people just came out and started passing out these little cups of juice like in a paper cup with this letter, and the letter, they didn't even say anything, and the letter said like, oh dear passenger, like we're sorry to inform you the whole airport has been shut down and your flight is canceled and we have no hotels and we have no food vouchers, so please just go home and try again in the morning and call the hotline. And that was like the worst
meltdown.
moment. Yeah, meltdown moment.
So that moment when you finally got to get on a plane,
yeah,
you're going home. Tell us about how that went down.
They were like, anyone else for Toronto? And they knew I had been waiting for such a long time. And I was like, me. And they're like, okay, just run upstairs and get on the plane. And I was like so excited. And like I was like running through security. I like left my makeup. They were like, do you want? I was like, leave it. And I was like sweating, and then I had got to the gate and it was like just closed, and they're like, oh, you made it. And I got on and I was like so excited.
Well, thanks so much, May, for coming and chatting with us about this. I never want to experience that.
Let's hope it never happens.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thanks for having me, guys.
Now we break down some of the week's trending topics. Lauren, I hear you've got some gossip, some reality TV show buzz.
I do. Well, Hollywood's favorite pair of altered noses have broken up. The most famous Kardashians that aren't actually Kardashians, Kris and Bruce Jenner, called it quits yesterday after over 20 years of marriage.
Tragic.
I know. I thought they'd make it. So the Jenners have actually been living separately for a while, as was documented on their show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Bruce sort of, got this man cave in Malibu, and, it was very dramatic. So now, good old poor Bruce can enjoy his beach house in peace without sitting in the background of one of his stepchildren's selfies. So maybe there is some silver lining here for him. And, onto a little bit more journalistically related news. Fox News once again impressed us with just how awesome they are at reporting. Fox and Friends host Anna Koyman said in a live discussion about the U.S. government shutdown that President Obama was paying out of pocket to keep the Museum of Muslim Heritage open. There's just one little problem with that. That actually never happened. The news came off of a satirical news spoof site, which is kind of like The Onion, that the anchor actually looked at and took as fact.
And I heard that museum actually doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is another problem. You'd think a simple Google would prove that to be false. And it's even more sad when you look at the other listed headlines on the website, and it's things like how New York's Mayor Bloomberg is planning to ban buffets in the city because Xenu, a figure in Scientology, told him to. So, journalism is clearly alive and well over at Fox. And so, Jonathan, you got to give me the rundown of what's going on in arts this week.
Well, Lauren, the entertainment industry is kind of reevaluating how it measures audience reaction. It's no longer just about the number of eyeballs.
Okay.
Nielsen, the venerable counting machine, has formulated a new system for TV studios, and this time it brings in Twitter into the mix. They're counting how many tweets are sent about a show as it's on and how many other Twitter users are seeing those tweets. How many are seeing those tweets is of interest, of course, because those people may actually go and watch that show after seeing the tweet. They gave an example. Only 98,600 people wrote messages on Twitter about Grey's Anatomy when it premiered last month, and that's a tiny fraction of the 9.3 million who watched the show that night. But they launched the new system this week, and Scandal came first, which is really interesting because Scandal came 19th if you look at it in the old system. 713,000 tweets reached a Twitter audience of 3.7 million about Scandal that night. Don't say nobody writes letters anymore, Lauren. The letter, specifically the open letter, is making a comeback. Okay, so it's a digital letter, but still. After the week, or was it weeks, of Miley that was late September, Sinead O'Connor penned a motherly letter and 3 more less motherly letters to the singer, urging her to not prostitute herself. She said, "The music business doesn't give a about you or any of us. They will prostitute you for all you are worth and cleverly make you think it's what you wanted. And when you end up in rehab as a result of being prostituted, they will be sunning themselves on their yachts in Antigua, which they bought by selling your body, and you will find yourself very alone." Well, and now the boys are in on the game too. Julian Assange of WikiLeaks fame, or notoriety depending where you stand, penned an open letter to Benedict Cumberbatch this week. Cumberbatch portrays the whistleblower in the upcoming film The Fifth Estate, and, well, Assange isn't too happy about it, Lauren. He says in his letter to Cumberbatch, "I believe you are a good person, but I do not believe that this film is a good film. It is based on a deceitful book by someone who has a vendetta against me and my organization. There are dozens of positive books about WikiLeaks, but DreamWorks decided to base its script only on the most toxic. So toxic is the first book selected by DreamWorks that it is distributed to the U.S. military bases as a mechanism to discourage military personnel from communicating with us." One thing is for sure, Lauren, these people know how to write a good letter.
Yeah, but I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't want him to get sassed.
I think it is perhaps maybe an unfair letter in a way, because it was not Cumberbatch doing the selection of the books or any kind of probably scripting of the film. He's just an actor portraying a character, right? But what do you think about Miley, Lauren, these open letters to Miley?
Oh,
do you
Miley.
think they're doing anything?
Well, honestly, it's like, from my perspective, it's like everyone's acting like this girl has a nuclear bomb under her clothes, and when she runs around scantily clad, that it's this huge threat to society. And it's just funny how we see female nudity in such different ways. Nobody's penning open letters to Victoria's Secret models who it's their bread and butter to walk in underpants, in front of millions, if not billions of people. But because this girl appears to be almost aggressively pursuing that sort of expression, it's like, oh my God, she's prostituting herself. So it's just kind of, I think it's a little bit sad.
I think that you're touching on something there that's interesting and not really addressed a lot in this whole Miley debate, is that she may be prostituting herself, if you want to think about it that way. But it's also interesting to note that she appears to be in total control of what she's doing. She's not one of these pop stars who is kind of out of control. She's kind of in control of her out of controlness, if I can say it like that. And she actually characterized it that way herself. She called her VMAs performance a strategic mess. It may have been a hot mess, but it was a strategic hot mess. So unlike a lot of pop stars that have come before her and done very scandalous things, I think it's important to note that she appears to be very thoughtful in what she's doing, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, she seems to be in control of this new image. And I mean, show business is a business of money. And, I think everyone needs to take note that Sinead O'Connor is going on tour in 2 weeks. It's a very convenient time for her to be coming out and be, making this very grandiose, claim against Miley. It's putting her name in the papers. We're talking about her. When was the last time someone actually talked about her? Right? So, I don't know. I think it's kind of this huge, very contrived spectacle. And you know what? She's just being Miley.
She's just being Miley. You're right. But at the same time, I do think the issues that are being touched here by these former pop stars, if you want to call them that, are really important. As Sinead's letters went on, and she did end up penning, I think, 4 letters, which some people think is a bit much, but she did address some really interesting things. I mean, Miley effectively mocked Sinead O'Connor on Twitter in response to the first letter, and O'Connor has had a history of bipolar disorder, and so the later letters were addressing this issue of mental illness that is really something people should talk about, as well as the feminist side of it all.
Oh, absolutely. And that was the thing that I was like, oh, come on, Miley. Like, you could have taken the high road and you took the lowest possible road. When she created a screen cap of some tweets that Sinead had put out when she was having a bipolar episode and aggressively looking for a psychiatrist. And she captioned this photo with "before Amanda Bynes, there was." And you know what? I think it's just, at the same time, while we need to reconsider the way we can, look at women's bodies, we need to reconsider the way that we frame mental illness. And it can't be something that's seen as a weakness or a joke. And that's exactly what Miley did. And, her PR people, or even her own self-controlled PR machine, really let it slip on that one.
Well, if anything, people are writing more letters, and that's a good thing. That's all for this week's Voices podcast.
Join us after reading week for some more art, life, class, and sass.
I'm Jonathan Forani.
And I'm Lauren Murphy.